The Wyoming sky broke open on a Tuesday in October, the kind of cold that pressed through a man's coat and settled into his bones like something that intended to stay. Eli Calloway had been riding for 2 days without shelter. His horse moved slow, head low against the wind. He wasn't looking for anything, he rarely was, anymore. He was just moving, the way a man does when he has nowhere left to go but forward. He saw the smoke first. A thin gray thread rising from the ridge above him, barely visible through the curtain of rain. His horse turned toward it without him even tugging the reins. Some instinct older than both of them. He didn't question it. The trail led up through pine and broken rock to the entrance of an abandoned mine. Old boards nailed across the opening, most of them rotted through. The smoke came from somewhere inside. He dismounted and called out, "Anybody in there?" A long silence. Then the sound of a hammer being cocked. A woman stepped into the opening. Young, red-eyed, auburn hair plastered to her face by the rain. She held an old rifle like she knew how to use it. Behind her, pressed against her leg, was a small boy. Maybe 5 or 6. His eyes were wide and watchful, but he didn't make a sound. Keep walking," she said. Eli raised both hands slowly. "Not here to trouble you, ma'am. Just saw the smoke." Her eyes moved to his horse. To the bedroll. To the worn leather duster and the pistol at his hip. She was measuring him the way people measure a loaded rifle, carefully, and with the understanding that one wrong move changed everything. "You're Eli Calloway," she said. It wasn't a question. He nodded once. "Used to be." Something shifted behind her eyes. She had heard that name before. Most people in Wyoming had. A gunfighter's reputation traveled faster than the man himself. He had spent years building the wrong kind of name. Spent the last 2 years trying to outrun it. She didn't lower the rifle. But she stepped aside. "Come in out of the rain," she said, voice flat with exhaustion. "But understand, I've buried one man already. I'm not afraid to do it again." Eli stepped inside. The fire was small, built with pine needles and dry bark to keep the smoke thin. The boy watched him with serious dark eyes. His name was Samuel. He was 6 years old. He hadn't said a single word since they'd gone into hiding, not once in 12 days. Her name was Clara Reed. Her husband Thomas had owned a small parcel of land on the western slope, prime grazing ground. He'd died 4 months before, a fall from a horse, everyone said. Clara didn't believe it, not after the men came 3 days later asking her to sell. She'd refused. They came back twice more. The last time, they'd brought a lawyer with papers that looked official but weren't. When she'd turned them away again, someone fired a shot through her kitchen window in the night. She packed what she could carry, took Samuel, and disappeared into the mountains. Eli listened to all of it without speaking. The fire crackled between them. Outside, the storm pressed against the old boards, making them groan. When she finished, he said nothing for a long time. Then, "Who are these men?" ? She told him the name. He recognized it. He had ridden with that outfit once, a long time ago. Before he knew what they were. Before he understood what he'd been helping them do. He stared at the fire. "How long can you stay here?" he asked quietly. "Supplies run out in 3 days." He nodded slowly. Then he stood, walked to his saddlebag, and brought in 2 days' worth of dried meat and hardtack. He set it down without ceremony, the way you set wood by a hearth. Not a gift, just what needed doing. That night, Samuel crept across the mine floor and sat beside him. Still silent, but he pressed his small shoulder against Eli's arm and closed his eyes. Eli sat perfectly still. He hadn't been trusted in a long time. He didn't know what to do with it, except not move, not flinch, not do anything that would break the strange and fragile thing being placed in his hands. They came down from the mountain after a week. Eli rode with them to the nearest town, a cluster of buildings called Harrow's Crossing. He told himself he was just making sure they arrived safely. He told himself he'd ride out after. He didn't. The town received Clara with polite coldness. A widow with a silent child and a known gunfighter at her side, the arithmetic of it didn't add up to anything comfortable. People looked, whispered behind their hands. The woman at the hotel desk gave them rooms at the far end of the hall, the ones facing the alley. But Clara held her head up and kept walking. That was the thing about her, Eli noticed. She never bent like a willow in wind, maybe, moved, shook, swayed in the gusts, but never broke at the root. He began to understand that was its own kind of strength. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't announce itself and doesn't need to. The trouble came on the 8th day. 3 riders arrived at the edge of town, and the oldest one asked around until he found Eli in the livery stable. He came in slow, hat tilted back, a smile carved from stone. "Calloway. Been looking for you." Eli didn't answer. "Heard you been keeping company with Thomas Reed's widow." The man tilted his head. "That land belongs to us now. The lawyer's papers are filed. You'd be smart to move on and let the woman accept what's hers to accept." Eli looked at him for a long, steady moment. "Those papers aren't filed," he said. "Because they're forged. And the man who forged them is going to have a hard time explaining himself to the circuit judge when he rides through next week." The smile didn't move. "You threatening me? I'm telling you what's going to happen," Eli said. "You can be standing here when it does, or you can be gone. That's the only choice on the table." They left before sundown. That night, Clara found him sitting on the hotel steps. She sat beside him without speaking for a while. The valley spread dark and wide before them, the stars sharp and close the way they only get in high country, like the sky has dropped a little lower, just to listen. "You didn't have to do that," she said finally. He shook his head. "Somebody did." She looked at him. "Why are you still here, Eli? You could have left a week ago." He thought about it honestly. He had been asking himself the very same question. "Because for the first time in a long time," he said quietly, "I woke up in the morning and it mattered what I did with the day." She was still for a moment. Then she said softly, "Samuel spoke this morning." Eli looked up. "He asked me if you were going to stay." She paused. "I didn't know what to tell him." The wind came down from the mountain, carrying pine and cold earth with it. Somewhere across the valley, a coyote called once and went quiet. "Tell him I'm thinking about it," Eli said. Clara's hand rested on the step between them. After a long moment, Eli placed his over it. Not pressing, not gripping, just resting there, the way you rest a hand when words have already said everything they can say, and something quieter takes over. The judge arrived 7 days later. The forged papers were thrown out. Clara's deed was confirmed in full. The men who had threatened her left the county before winter and never came back. The land on the western slope was hers. She asked Eli to help her build a fence line before the ground froze. He said yes. Then he helped with the fence posts. And the roof. And the south wall that leaned 2 inches off plumb. And the broken window frame in the room Samuel had already chosen for his own, the one that faced the mountains. By the time the first snow fell, Eli had stopped keeping count of the things he was still fixing. Some repairs take longer than others. And some things, the ones worth doing, you don't realize you've been building until the day you step back and see what you've made. 2 people who had walked into the mountains expecting nothing sat on the porch of a small house on the western slope. The valley below them lay white and still under the first snow of winter. Samuel ran circles in the yard, laughing, his voice carrying bright and clear across the quiet land. The first laughter Eli had heard from him. The kind that doesn't hold anything back. Clara smiled and leaned her shoulder gently against Eli's. He let her. The mountains stood behind them, indifferent and old and magnificent. But in the small warm space between 2 people who had found each other by accident, and decided, quietly, stubbornly, without any ceremony, to stay, something had taken root. Something that would outlast the winter. Something that felt, against all reason and against all the odds that had stacked against both of them. Like it had always been meant to grow there.